Do it.
We are back here, episode 20, big break. This show is a show divided. Looks like Ethan's got number 33 on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Special number there. Can't see it here. I'll stand up real quick. Got my number 18 on. Marvin Harrison Jr. breaking this one out. Drew, who are you supporting?
Number 2, Charles Woodson.
Okay.
Dude,
Ooh.
that's nice.
Oh, that's nice.
And
Well,
should I get my jersey
well,
out?
Go. Go get it. Who are you putting on? Braylon?
Oh God. Stone hands.
Let's see. Let's see what I've got in here.
I chose this one because I figured, Ethan, you were going to be wearing your 33 one, so we could give the viewers a little preview of what they're going to be seeing this year. 33 throwing to number 18.
It's fair. I was more of a James Laurinaitis guy, but yeah.
I like it. Well, me too.
My
Me
other
too.
jersey's in the mail. But
Oh,
I
what'd you
have
get? What'd you get?
I have whoa. It's number 4. It's Marquise Walker. Or
Which one who'd you get this?
also Devian Smith. Oh, my New Jersey?
Yeah.
Blake Corum.
Okay. Like it.
Respect.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
We're going to kick it off here. Let's just start it. It looks like we're going now from 14 to 18 teams.
What?
Oregon and Washington are officially joining the Big Ten next season.
Haven't heard anything about it.
You have not.
Newsflash.
Newsflash. But yes, we
Haven't-
are. Go ahead.
So haven't walked outside in 36 hours. Didn't know a thing about it.
Yep. Who's next?
You gotta figure
I
what
think,
you're doing with the Pac-12.
I think it's going to be a year before they add anybody else because then I think the ACC is going to go next year.
Probably.
Do you think they're gonna split?
Yeah.
What were
But
your guys' initial thoughts though on Washington and Oregon coming? Because it was rumored that they were going to be a part of the initial group, along with USC and UCLA back. What was it? January or so when we found that out. Maybe
Yeah.
spring-ish when we found that out officially. But it sounded like Oregon and Washington were going to be a part of that. Then they weren't. Now they are. What's your guys' initial thoughts here on that?
Personally, I think we should have restructured. I think that you should sift out some of the bottom feeders. I don't feel. I mean, I hate to say that from a sports standpoint and how the money flows to these schools because of all this, but there's too many teams. I think 12 to 16 is absolute max, and from there you need to try to figure out a way to just cut the loose ends at the bottom. I don't think there's any reason to have this many teams in a conference unless you're shooting for an AFC NFC type of thing, but then you have to restructure your whole playoff.
Absolutely. Corey, your thoughts?
I mean, I always thought Oregon was coming when USC and UCLA. It kind of felt like that was the team, the third good team that was going to come out of the Pac-12 that was going to come with them. So that wasn't really shocking to me. Washington, I mean, Washington is good, has been good for like the last 2 or 3 years, but usually they're not the best. So they're more, to me, going to be more of a bottom feeder team who will just beat up Rutgers in Indiana, basically. And the other thing to me is funny is they came out with the 24 schedule already and they have to redo it.
Yeah.
So awesome.
And not only do they have to redo that, now we have to refigure out who's going to be the keeper teams. Your three guaranteed. I think you have to. I think you have to.
You can do that. I think you're going to give everybody one. You're going to give everybody one, I think, guaranteed game, and then you're going to basically, it's just going to be a round robin kind of thing.
Drew?
You're going to get your biggest rival, and then you're going to have to just wait for everybody to cycle around every few years.
Drew, your initial thoughts?
Well, I'll preface this by saying that I am a big Washington fan, so I am excited to see what UW come in. But just like USC and UCLA, these teams don't belong in our conference. It makes no sense. Um, it's good for football and basketball, but the rest of the sports are going to be fucked.
Oh God, yeah,
Hopefully,
they
the
will
rest of
be.
the sports can actually keep their programs alive. I imagine there's going to be a lot of programs that get cut. This is all just for money. It's all for television. It's done for the wrong reasons. Um, we're kind of losing the specialness that was college football. I hate to see the Pac-12 die. I think it's a great conference. Um, but we are going to get some fun, entertaining games. With the conference going to 18 teams now, I think we have to increase the amount of conference games. I think we should play 11 conference games and one non-con.
Okay.
I like that. I like that.
Um, I agree with you, Drew. And I think part and a lot, and I was like feeling this kind of now since the NIL has came about, and now just seeing where we're headed in college football. It's like my favorite sport in the entire world is just being torn piece by piece to make it more of a amateur professional league, right? And I kind of agree with you. This kind of is they don't belong in our conference, number one. Why are we traveling 2,000 miles for 4 games a year? Or having them travel 2,000 miles to play us? You know what I'm saying? Um, I just don't like. I get it for all the money purposes, but I don't like it. I don't like these moves. I don't like these super conferences. If you were gonna disband a conference, and I've said it before, if this was the NCAA's plan or these conferences' plans, you needed to get rid of the conferences altogether and go to 4 regions and divvy up these teams by and just divvy up everybody by a north just go 4 regions and basically say your 4 region champions, you play a round robin, and there's your 4 teams in your playoff. That's just what my opinion. I mean, with all these conference alignments, to Ethan's point, this is where you're heading. You're headed to an AFC, NFC style thing for college football.
I mean,
And
conference championships don't matter anyway. Now, once you have a 12-team playoff,
No,
conference championships mean nothing anyway. Oh, you get
no,
another trophy and a ring. Congratulations.
it doesn't mean it. Yeah, it won't mean anything.
and
Mhm.
these college fan bases aren't going to travel like professional sports teams travel or have professional sports teams have fan groups in every city. College, some colleges aren't going to have that.
Yeah,
You're
I
not.
mean, I think some of the fewer, I mean, Ohio State, Michigan, USC,
Yeah.
UCLA, Oregon, those teams are going to travel regardless because they
They may
travel
not
now.
though, but
But
like
they,
when
but
Oregon came to Columbus, there wasn't a big Oregon crowd there. I mean, where like just as an example, I mean, when Ohio
But
State
how
or
many seats
Michigan
were actually
travels,
available? That's the thing, is how many seats were actually available for Oregon. They were a
you're
top 10 team.
Yeah.
you're not
Ohio State
wrong.
wanted to keep all of those.
You're not wrong. But but my point against that is Ohio State fans and Michigan fans wouldn't care if we don't get so many seats. We're gonna go on Ticketmaster. They're gonna go on StubHub, Geek, Seat, whatever, and they're buying tickets. And they're gonna flood the stadium and make sure it is a home game for your team. And to your point, I don't think that the Pac-12 fans are gonna do that. I don't think USC travels very well outside of the state of California.
I think that you're going to have a hard time finding the passion in the fan bases like you do in the more locally clustered conferences, like the Big Ten, like the SEC, where it's easy access to all these schools. And like you said, I agree. You either need to allocate certain tickets like they do, but you're going to have to bump that up. And you got to find a way to get these teams to travel. You're going to lose all this money. It's not going to be beneficial to anybody if that's the case.
Well, I
I
mean,
mean, half the stadiums are in the Big Ten are not filled every Saturday anyway.
Right. I mean, I've been to
I
plenty
mean,
of them.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. Like it's to me, it's not going to
and
really change that much. The USC fans who want to follow USC are going to follow them. Same as the Michigan fans, the Ohio State fans,
right.
even Northwestern fans will travel if they want to follow their team. It's just about. I mean, I mean, Oregon will be filled every time. I mean, I think it would be cool to go to Eugene, Oregon.
It
I mean,
it
I think it would
is.
be
Yeah.
cool.
No,
Take a
I
tour of
agree.
Nike too. I mean, like, but there's you're I don't nothing's really going to change. You're going to have the fans who want to go to games every Saturday, and you're going to have those fans who want to just sit at home. That's just the same way it's going to be. And to be honest, I think college football's in trouble because you have all this money that you're making from the playoff in 4 games, right? Or 3 games out of the playoff, and now you're going to have what, 15 games total? So I mean, you're like, the money is going to be, it's all about money, and that's going to be, it seems like tickets prices should go down because they're going to be trying to fill the stands, but it seems like they're just going to go up.
oh, all these ticket sales are just gonna go up, and they're gonna keep going up because the ticket prices. Because you're just gonna have, like, what are you gonna do when it's Ohio State, USC, or Michigan, USC? You know what I mean?
I
Like that,
mean,
it's a premium game. It's gonna happen. Michigan, Oregon, premium game. Ohio State, UCLA, premium game. Washington versus Penn
Fringe.
State, fringe premium game. But like, it's just,
I, I mean, but to your point, when you go to the whiteout in Penn State, how many Ohio State fans do you actually see in the whiteout?
I mean,
One section.
but they're all wearing white.
And they don't turn the lights on in that section either. If you pay
Yeah,
attention, that's a dark
yeah,
section of the
I mean, but
stadium.
still,
it is.
you don't.
That's
I mean, but still,
I mean, but I guess what I'm saying though is like when we go to like when like you're not wrong, Core. Half the stadiums of the Big Ten don't get filled now, but when those stadiums are filled, it's when Ohio State and Michigan are traveling to them, or Penn State is, because our fans are going to Indiana. What Drew's just shown.
IU Purdue will fill up like
Rivalry,
yeah.
rivalry games. Yeah.
rivalry. But I'm just
Well,
saying,
and games that
typically,
have like a trophy will fill up too. I mean, like the bigger stadiums, the bigger teams are not going to have an issue. It's going to be your Indianas and
and
Purdue's
that's
and Northwesterns, who at halftime you could literally walk into the stadium and no one would see you because there's so many open spaces.
um
Hmm.
to that point. So I was reading, so per CBS, in the article that announced, what Oregon and Washington's payout will be this 2024 season for signing on late or whatever it is. It's $30 million that they get, and then obviously they get full share rights or whatever going into like 2025 or whenever the TV deal gets redrafted. And so here's the thing is, so Washington and per the out of the TV deal, Washington and Oregon are going to make 30 million each, but they are expected for football traveling alone to spend about $10 million or so. So that really takes that, or like traveling costs for like sports or whatever is like roughly 10 million. So then that gets taken down to about 20 million that they're grossing. And the Apple TV deal per Pac-12 school payout was only $20 million. So with their $10 million travel thing, they would have only been making 10 million, right? Essentially grossing 10 million. Um, so why I wanted to bring that up is, to your point, Corey, that is what's going to kill schools like Indiana. That's what's going to kill these schools, Purdue's, your Rutgers and stuff, when they have to travel all the way out to California. And it's not, or and Washington and Oregon, and it's not just for football and basketball. And basketball, that's, you're traveling out there now 4 times a year because you play everybody at home and away.
I mean, but what about the basketball teams that travel to
No,
Hawaii to play in the Great Hawaiian
yeah, but
Classic?
that's a weekend. But that's all done in a weekend or a week. You're not talking flying You're not talking about on Wednesday flying from Ann Arbor out, or on Monday flying from Ann Arbor out to Los Angeles to play UCLA Tuesday night, flying back home, turning around and then flying back on Saturday to face UCLA.
You'd like to think the scheduling would come into effect
Fact.
then when you go to
Well,
USC, you're going to play
but
UCLA 2 days later to make sure you can stay out there. They're
right,
not gonna
but
spend
regardless,
unnecessary money
but
going back
regardless,
and
you're
forth.
not wrong. But regardless, Indiana's, your Purdue's, your smaller schools in the Big Ten aren't going to be able to fund that for your baseball teams, your tennis teams. Like Drew was saying, all these other sports are going to end up getting cut at these schools because they can't afford to have them travel out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's a risk the Big Ten's willing to take. Although their money deal is doing something, their TV deal, they're going to do something that no sport has ever done before. So they'll be making plenty of money, in my opinion.
I think there's going to be enough money to trickle down and support that,
Yeah,
regardless of how it looks on paper.
I mean,
They wouldn't
the Big Ten will be
Yeah.
guaranteed a noon, 3:30, 7, and 10:30 p.m. game every Saturday. What other conference is going to promise that?
You're not wrong, but that's
There's
for
4 different
football.
networks.
But that's for
I-
football
Yeah.
Okay.
and basketball. What about
What about
Indiana's?
swimming?
Yeah, what about Indiana's swimming team? What about
Field hockey.
Purdue's women's lacrosse team that has to
To
travel?
me, the money that's going to be made for football and basketball based on the TV deals, the other money that would typically go to that team is going to trickle down to the other sports.
It should.
That's what I
It
see.
should,
Yeah,
but
that's what
it should, but it's not going to.
It's not going to in most places.
In most places, it won't go to that because
See, I don't think that. I think it will. I
So
think
where are
it
you
will
gonna
because
put it?
there's no.
Where's it gonna go?
it's all going to go back to
Well-
those programs.
Yeah, football facilities,
Football facilities are going to they're going to spend.
recruiting,
Yeah,
NIL.
But teams
All of that.
but teams from the Big Ten, their portion of what goes to each team that would typically go to do that, there's going to be some sort of fund, I'm assuming, from the Big Ten that's going to help to do that. The Big Ten is going to be making
Hopefully.
so much money
Hopefully.
that it's going to be unbelievable. And you also forget donors. Let's not forget donors will still donate and donate more money. I mean, schools around the country are still getting millions and millions of dollars of donations that they still right now potentially put into football that they won't have to because of the Big Ten's TV deals and everything else. Again, it's all hypothetical. Sure, I understand that those littler sports, swimming and diving, golf, those smaller sports,
They're going to suffer.
whatever. But again, if they suffer, to me, it's not going to be suffering for a very long time. It's going to be a 1-year thing. They realize that they can figure out what they can do. I find it very hard to believe that these sports that have been around for a long, long, long time, that have outstanding records and things like that, like Indiana diving or whatever, who wins national championship after national championship, whatever, they're not going to find a way to keep that around. There's going to be a way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that
But
it's not going to. You're going to get that funding, and if I'm one of your lead donors, and my kid's a golfer, and you want my money to go towards your X, Y, or Z program, you're probably going to want to keep my millions of dollars around.
But those are all different funds. But those are all different funds. Those aren't like when you have and I know
I'm
this
sure
is like
there's
at
an
Ohio,
imaginary
but like at
sheet of paper somewhere that
You're-
allows you to
you're not
transfer
wrong.
imaginary numbers around.
but like for Ohio State, they have football boosters, basketball boosters, and I know like in Indiana they have like the same thing. They have like each sport has like their own boosters and donors. So you're not wrong, Ethan. Like, yeah, like if you want my money, you're gonna keep this golf program. But if Indiana comes back and says, okay, we need then a $20 million donation from you to keep this golf program alive because we can't afford the funding to send them out to California, Oregon, Washington. Like, we can't afford these things. And I'm telling you, it happens even at Ohio State. Like, back in 2006, when Ohio State traveled, or 2007 when Ohio State traveled to Texas, They didn't even have it. They didn't have enough money in their budget to send the band with them, and that was $200,000. A super wealthy guy in Columbus paid the 250 or whatever the price was to send the band down there himself, so that way they could go down there and be in Texas. And that was 20 something years ago.
I mean, but that's
That
always a thing. That's
right,
always a thing.
but
Sometimes teams don't have cheerleaders at their bowl games because they can't afford to do that. That's
right,
that's a
but that's
lot,
what
but
but
that's
that's what I'm
different than a whole sport.
but
That
that
the
but
sport
that is just one
itself.
aspect that the
But the
school's saying
golf
we
team
can't
at
afford that.
so okay, let me ask you something. Does the golf team at Ohio State, do they not make any money? They don't bring in any money towards the school.
They don't.
Probably not.
They don't. Ohio State
I
football
find that
and
very hard to believe.
Corey, you can even look it up at Michigan. Michigan football and basketball, their profits subsidize every other sport at Michigan. Every single one of them are subsidized by Michigan football and basketball.
That's the
This
majority of most schools too.
Correct, but they won't need to do that once the new Big Ten effect goes in and they have all of these other schools. They're going to be making so much more money that those funds are going to go to keep those other sports. I'm telling you, a college campus in the Big Ten will die. The college will go out of business and not be a college anymore if they only support basketball and football.
you're probably not wrong.
So you're going to just have
No,
basically
but you're
11
gonna
women on campus who just for the women's
but
basketball team, since women don't play football. That's not going to happen.
but you're gonna
These donors, and there's ways around it that they're going to find to make money. I'm telling you, I find it very hard to believe that no profit is made from any of those other sports.
there's
Just from
not.
firsthand, Michigan softball made money this past year. I can promise you that. Other schools like that are going to make money another way, whether it be fundraiser, whether it be moving funds from other places, they will find a way to stay in business. There's no way that you can just have a college campus that has just football and just basketball.
So this is directly from the University of Michigan's website, Corey. U of M Athletics reported 55 plus $1 million in ticket sales across all sports. $55 million in ticket sales.
Sure.
47.5 million of that was just from football alone, which
Well,
compared, which is which then is
but
the
we're
men's.
also but we're not talking about Michigan and Ohio State. They're going to have the funds regardless. Look up Northwestern.
Okay.
Look up Indiana. Northwestern makes money because they're a private school. Michigan and Ohio State won't have that problem. The teams that we're going to have the problem are going to be Indiana's, Northwestern's, Purdue's, those teams that don't have 100,000 seat stadium for football that make $5 million every Saturday. You have teams that don't fill that. That's what I'm saying. We're with the smaller schools is what you're talking about who's going to struggle. Michigan and Ohio State are not going to struggle.
You're not wrong, but that's what we're saying though is that these smaller schools are going to be the ones who are going to lose these smaller programs.
I don't think so. I don't. I don't. The smaller schools don't make as much money as the bigger schools. Sure, absolutely, I agree with that. But these schools have gone on. But like for instance, off the Big Ten, look at Xavier in Cincinnati. They had a football team, couldn't keep it because they didn't have enough money, right? So now they have basketball is their main sport, but they don't just have they don't have basketball. They have baseball, they have golf, they have women's lacrosse, men's lacrosse. They have all of it. They just don't have football because where they're at, they're private and don't have enough money or donors to build that team. These teams already have those sports already established. They don't have to make a new one. If it's one thing, sure, I could see maybe one sport. You might have to cut women's and men's rowing from something for a summer or something like that. Potentially.
But it's not going to be for that. They're going to cut these sports because football, basketball are subsidizing all them. So if you're a university and you just signed this big contract deal, how are you going to justify giving over 50% of that money to these smaller schools when your basketball and football program are the ones making you all the money. That's what we're saying. All that money is still just going to go to these top programs.
It's gonna. I
Drew?
personally,
I imagine the percentages that the different sports programs intake are going to increase small, but I imagine that football and basketball are still going to dominate when it comes to how much money they're taking in from that total, which makes sense because they are the revenue sports. But like I don't know how many like lower sports donors there are out there. I mean, I know it like bigger schools like LSU is a huge gymnastics school, so I'm sure that they wouldn't have a problem finding gymnastics money. But I know, just for example, Bowling Green a couple years ago cut the baseball team because the baseball team doesn't make any money. And then 2 years later, a giant donor and like fund came together and brought back the baseball team. So it is possible. It's just I don't know how likely it is
It's
for such small sports like field hockey, rugby. Like I don't know.
what the Big Ten can do, though, to fix that is they can just buy a plane for each school and let each team use it to travel. Every sport has access to that.
you're
Free transportation would be huge. That would
Be
save a lot
awesome.
of money, dude.
That'd be fantastic.
And the Big Ten has enough money to be able to do that and
Mhm.
still make a shit ton.
Mm-hmm.
Especially even if it's not the first year, that'll pay off by year 2, 3, 4, and then still be making money hand over fist.
No. All of those planes will be covered by Michigan and Ohio State and USC by themselves. Just in football, probably. The revenue the Big Ten will make just from those three schools in one football season.
In one
Yeah.
playoff run.
Yeah.
Probably in like 3 games. The 3 teams that when they all play each other, in those 3 games,
Yeah.
they probably could fund it.
Next year when there's 3 or 4 teams in the playoff.
Yeah, because I saw that Ohio State reported $47.6 million in ticket sales in 8 games last year in revenue, and that was they had 100,000 every game at home. I looked
that's
it up on
yeah,
an NBC
over
Sports thing.
over 100,000 every game.
Well, it said minimum, so I just
Yeah.
used easy numbers,
Yeah,
whole numbers,
that's what I'm
which
saying.
averaged like $60 a ticket.
Yeah, which I get, and I tell
bad.
you right now from experience, not everybody paid face value for their ticket to get into that stadium, and I'll tell you that right now.
I mean, you can't even get a face value Michigan Ohio State ticket right now.
No,
When's the last time you could?
I got one in 2010, and that's
I got
because
one.
I knew a
I got one
coach.
in 11, and I knew a coach too. But I got
Yeah.
one. I found one on the walking up. I had a buddy who was what we were looking for a ticket, and he found one for the guy was selling it like an hour before.
It was like $75.
Mine was
I think
70.
I think the face value ticket was 60,
Yeah.
and at Michigan they have a weird thing where you have to have your student ticket has to be like stickered and authorized. So you have to have a student ID to authorize it. Otherwise, you have to pay like a $50 fee to get the thing. I'm
Checks
telling you,
out.
these schools will find a way to make money to keep these programs. They will find a way. I mean, even if they have to ask a basketball donor if they'll donate an extra 100,000 to the golf team, I'm sure that guy can handle it, or I'm sure the professional athlete who went to that school can help fund that. I mean, you have these guys who like their kids. Their dream would be for their kid to go to that school and play a sport that they played, regardless if it's rowing, whatever. Regardless of what it is, that's their dream. If they have to dish out more money to do it, it happens all over.
I agree. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, as long as you don't Brett Favre and steal the money from the state welfare.
Whoops.
You're okay.
Well,
just don't be Brett Favre.
Well, he was
Don't
never.
be
I just-
Brett
He was
Favre.
never a good person.
I just
He was never a good quarterback.
I just don't
that
see
too.
and today's culture where that's just going to get funneled down, specifically of how competitive you're going to have to be in your top echelon sports to keep making that type of money.
I mean, but NIL.
You're not wrong, Corp, but that's also where these schools are going to be pulling from that TV fund, NIL.
You're not supposed to be paying players out of your own pocket for them to go there, though. That's why
you're
they
not
have that.
You're not going. Look, I saw this post the other day, and it was a picture of Johnny Manziel, and it said, "I miss the days of college football where the players were paid under the table."
Agreed.
You know what I mean? Like,
Agree.
because
Agree.
we can't. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend, in any shape or form, that none of these schools are paying people directly. Like, let's not kid ourselves. They could say what they want, but we know we can say what we want, but I know that Ohio State's paying people directly. Same thing with frickin' Michigan. Same thing with USC. Same thing with Alabama. Same thing with Florida. Same thing with Florida State, Miami. All these, Georgia. We're all doing the same shit.
But they've always done that.
Yeah.
And we've always done it.
Now it's cash.
But now it's now it's out in the Owen.
But now when you walk on campus, you get a jersey, cleats, armbands, helmet, visor, hats, shirts, sweatshirts
everything
for your sister, sweatshirts for your mom. So
they were getting it anyways, and they were probably checks and bags. There were bags of cash sitting in that shit too.
Of course,
but
100%.
But like, we can't sit here and pretend that the schools aren't doing it. So like, when they get the money, it's all gonna funnel through NIL and all this other crap anyways. And I guess that's what like kind of Drew and I were really like, saying like eventually some of these programs, their funds are gonna run dry. And I guess like too, what we're also saying is like, how do you justify subsidizing that when they're not making any money? Like, how do you subsidize having a rowing team in Columbus, Ohio, when you're not near any major body of water?
Yeah, I mean, I get you, but still, they'll make it work if they want to make it. I guess that's the other thing.
If they want to
make it work, that's
the biggest piece. That's the biggest piece right there. Nailed it.
The schools are gonna pick and choose which sports they want to give money to.
Yep.
And hopefully it's your sport. If it's not your sport,
you're screwed.
Don't go to that school.
Yep.
We mentioned it earlier, so I want to just transition here. That was a good talk though. I just wanted to transition here though. Corey mentioned it earlier, with the scheduling aspect. We just released the 2024 scheduling, and then Oregon and Washington were like, that was complicated. Hold my beer. We're going to make it even more. Yeah, wait for us. We're going to make it even more complicated. What do you guys like? How do you envision this all working out now?
I think the West teams are going to play the West teams every year to start, to make it easy. I mean, that's 4 teams right there, 4 games, and then you have like, they're going to end up playing probably like Nebraska, and won't even probably go all the way to like Penn State. It's hard because the Big Ten wants to make money too, even though they make enough already. So it's going to be really hard for them not to schedule like USC Penn State or Oregon Penn State and have them fly all the way across the country, because they know just from that game they're going to make so much money.
Here's my vision. With that being said, Corey, here's my vision with it. Is you have 4 power teams on the West. You essentially have 4 power teams here on the East Coast, right? You have Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and you could throw Wisconsin or Michigan State kind of into the conversation, whatever. But we really only have 3. But you could throw another team in there to match them up against Washington. And I think what you're going to have is they're going to travel out here for 2 games, and we're going to travel out there for 2 games. So where Ohio State and Michigan will travel to Los Angeles to face UCLA and USC, but then Oregon and Washington travel to Columbus and Michigan, and vice versa. So like so you always have your 4 top teams playing each other essentially in a season, in a matchup, but you're going to get it to where two travel out west, and then the two West Coast teams travel out to the East Coast to make that a little
What
more easier on
what I
traveling.
what I'd like to see happen is I'd like to see like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State play USC like the first week of the season, like how we used to. There always is like that Cotton Bowl
Chick-fil-A.
game, Cotton Bowl
Yeah.
game, or something like that. I mean, because it's really underrated because a lot of people, big or small school, the first game of the year is typically when you have the most attendance because that's the most hype for the season before they can either go way downhill or keep rising. I think like having like Michigan travel to USC and play it in the Rose Bowl, as like a game like that would be something to see, and that would kind of maybe offset some of the difficulties if you kind of did that every year and just had like an alternating one of those three teams is going to travel and it's going to either be this team, or this team the first game of the year. I mean, honestly, I think the Big Ten should just let it be a free for all and just schedule no out of conference games and just play 10 in conference games.
Play
I mean,
12.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, 10 or 11 conference games. I mean, it doesn't matter. It really, I mean, college football is kind of on the down, unfortunately, because going into this 12-team playoff, it's kind of like anybody's going to get in. You know who the four teams at the beginning of the year who are going to be in there, regardless of what their record is. Doesn't really matter.
Drew, pick
So
6 teams right now who are going to make who you envision for the next 5 years making the 12-team playoff every year.
National teams.
Yeah.
Georgia, Clemson, USC, Ohio State, Texas, Bammer, LSU,
Okay. So,
Florida State,
I mean,
Notre Dame. We
Michigan.
can keep going, dude.
right.
mean,
Yeah.
There's only
That's-
about 15 teams.
But the point is how many of those teams are in the Big Ten and how many of those teams are in the SEC?
Probably 10.
The majority.
Right.
The Big 12's coming up, though. I do like the
Yeah.
moves the Big 12's making.
My biggest
Yeah.
thing is not that it matters, but where are you going to host the Big Ten championship game? Are you going to have all these teams come back to Indy?
So I heard a
Are we
good.
moving it?
Well,
going
I
out to St.
heard.
Louis.
I
The dome's
heard
still
a
available.
good. I heard a good scenario for that. Alternating years between Indianapolis and the Rose Bowl,
Don't
and
like it.
I kind of like that.
Don't.
I don't.
No,
I
Why
don't.
put it
not?
in St.
That's a home.
Louis.
If it's in the Rose Bowl, that's a home field for any California team. That's a home field. That's like when Michigan and Ohio State traveled to the Rose Bowl in the early 2000s to play USC. You had no shot. It was 95% USC fans all the time. You
And they
have
just
to
let 'em
find
get the
you have to
tickets.
find you have to find a common travel. I think maybe Jerry World.
That's where
Too
the
much
Big
happens
12.
there.
Big 12.
I'm telling you, St.
Well,
Louis, that's still
yeah,
available.
I
That
mean,
stadium's
yeah.
kept.
Yeah, you find a venue that's good for everybody, or you just make everybody travel. I think you have to have one spot. I don't think you can rotate it. I mean, really, you could just say, oh, whoever's the best team, we play it. It gets a home game. If you
I
wanted to
don't
play it
think
at
you
the
could.
Rose Bowl,
I don't think you could do that in December. Here.
why not? Why not?
Let's go to Lincoln. Let's play it in
Why
Lincoln.
not?
That's right in the middle, isn't it?
Why not? Wouldn't you love to see USC come play the Big Ten championship in the snow? I'd love that.
They wouldn't let that happen.
No, because I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't love to see Ohio State play a Big Ten championship game in the snow. Nor would I want to. I wouldn't want to see that at all.
Yeah.
I want to see that during the regular season, but when I want championship football, I want to see who's the best team, not who's the best team in those conditions.
But they'll probably still keep it in Indy.
And
honestly, they'll probably keep it in Indy, and they'll give. And if it's a West Coast team, they'll give them. They'll move it back so there's like a 10-day period instead of like a week.
No, you'll still have it that same week. But I think the Big Ten championship game will be moved to like I think you'll no matter what still get it at that 8 o'clock start time. And you
They're
won't,
going
and
to
they
have
won't.
to.
Yeah, I don't think you would. I don't think you could change the start time of the
Well, you
championship
can't
game.
play it at 9 a.m. Pacific
No,
time.
no, you can't play it at noon.
Well, and
I think
that's a whole nother story about scheduling.
Oh, all
I think if the Bears get a new indoor stadium in Chicago, I think that's perfect. That's the
Yeah.
headquarters of Big Ten anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
that's
that.
true.
But it'd
I
have
like
to
that.
be indoor. I don't know about an outdoor
Isn't that
game
what
at
they're
Soldier Field.
scheming? Aren't they scheming one of those open air roof
Yeah,
Yeah.
stadiums?
They're
but
In the
that's probably
in the
years
suburbs.
away.
yeah, it's supposed to be out by where like Corey, it's kind of out by where MJ lives. MJ's
Mhm.
house is where they're thinking about like somewhere up in that area of suburbs is where they're thinking about putting the stadium.
Well, yeah, you have to put it somewhere where there's nothing, where they
Yeah.
can literally there's
Yeah,
nothing.
you got to have room for people. You're
Mhm.
you're going to be
I
attracting.
mean, they're not going to build a sick $2 billion stadium for it to hold 30,000 people. So you have to take that into consideration when they build it. That they have to build it somewhere where there's a lot of land because they're going to be building a 60, 70,000 arena.
Yep, absolutely.
What would you guys think about Northwestern going in with the Bears organization on building a stadium, like a dual stadium for the Bears and the Wildcats to play in?
I
I don't
don't
know. I
think
like
they would
Ryan
fill
Field.
it. I don't think Northwestern could fill that. That's the problem.
I don't think they
Yeah.
would fill it, but I'm just saying like you
But
would.
that's a lost money for Northwestern if they pay all that money for that stadium and they don't fill it. That's a loss for them.
Yeah, that's
And
not worth it.
I think Ryan Field, right? Isn't that what it is? Ryan
Ryan
Field.
Field, yeah.
It's sweet. It's
Yeah, I
sweet.
like
Yeah,
Ryan
no,
Field
That's
a
but
like
it's
lot.
getting torn
that's like
down.
a
Ryan Field's getting torn down, and they're building a $2 billion stadium. So that's what I'm
Fine.
saying. Like they're already spending
yeah,
$2 billion to build a 40,000 thing stadium. Why not just go in with the Bears and just say, hey, let's do this together, save
Because
each
you're not
other
going to
some
get the
money.
40,000 ever, let alone 70,000.
Well, right, but if you're not going to fill your $40,000 $2 billion stadium now, why not save yourself $1 billion and go halvesies on a $70,000 stadium?
I don't know. I
because I
like where
think
Ryan
there's a
Field is
lot of
now.
Drew's
there's a
like,
lot
well,
of
yeah. Drew's like, hey, I get
That
it.
makes
well, but
sense.
there's a lot of things. Does Northwestern sell beer at their stadium? They have to get
No.
they'd have to get the approval
From the
to do that
NCAA to do
from the
that, yeah.
NCAA to do that. I mean, like there's a
They
lot of
don't
Actually,
have
there's
any
a
factors.
way.
beer.
No, there's a way to get around that because this is what Ohio State did. Ohio Stadium is no longer classified as a sports venue; it's a entertainment venue.
Yeah, but you can't. But I don't think. I think you
If
can't have it.
if you
I
reclassify, you can do it
Yeah,
because that's what we
but
did.
here's but right, but not only but it's not just that. Think about the staff that would not typically be working, having to work there during the off season of the NFL now has to work there 3 weeks earlier because of college football, or 2 weeks earlier because of college football. I mean, there's a lot of factors. I think
I
Northwestern
was
is a
just
small
throwing it out
school.
there.
I think having a stadium around their campus is going to be a lot better than
Oh,
having people take a
1,000%. I was
train
just
a
throwing.
train to go see their football team that's only going to have 20,000 people there to begin with.
Well, right. I mean, I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Let's get to the heart of it here. Let's get
I'm
to
trying to
the
think of how many Big Ten stadiums sell beer.
not
Purdue
many,
does.
not many.
Michigan doesn't. Michigan doesn't.
Michigan's got to get granted waivers for theirs because
Yep.
when I was there for Manchester
They
United, Real
sell.
Madrid, they had to get a waiver because we could buy
Yeah.
beer that time.
They get a waiver for the Michigan Ohio State game every year.
Yep.
But that's the
But-
only game that
And
they
if you
typically don't serve
reclassified
it.
and if you reclassified the big house from a sports venue to an entertainment venue, you could sell booze there.
Do you want to know
ins-
why they don't? Do you want to know why they don't want to do that though? Think about 110,000 people buying beer. That's just not a smart move.
I don't
You
You have
disagree.
to
explains
have
Ohio State
because then you
fans
have to
are how
have
they are.
extra cops, extra security, extra everything, and they don't want that, and they don't need that. You already have obnoxious away fans that come in there and drink their ass off.
Indiana sells beer, don't they? I'm pretty sure they
Yeah, they
do.
do. I think they do.
I think so.
All right.
There
Uh,
used to only be a few teams too that only
Penn
sell
State
beer.
doesn't, I don't think. I don't think Happy Valley
No,
does.
I'm pretty sure Emu does. I think I drank beer at Emu the one time I was there with Dave.
Eastern
but did
Michigan,
you drink?
Probably.
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
Emu
either.
But did you drink?
Eagles.
But did you drink beer and sneak it in, or did you actually buy it?
I've never
Um,
snuck
That is the
beer in.
question.
I've
so
snuck liquor in. That's different.
let's get to the
Everybody does
heart.
that.
Let's get to
The
the
old
heart.
plastic flask in the belt.
That's right.
Let's get to the heart of it here. We can't talk one without the other, obviously, as the background shows and the title of the show divided. General conversations here about Ohio State, Michigan. Um, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about them going into the season? Are these going to be the two best teams in the Big Ten? Like history has shown us these past decades. Um, Most excited about both teams? What are you most looking forward to, improvement wise for both? Just a general discussion here, guys.
I definitely am excited for both of these teams. And I think what I'm most excited for is the uncertainty that it's possible that one of them slips up and causes chaos. Hardball suspension has zero impact, doesn't make a difference.
Has he even been suspended yet?
Not officially, not that I
They're
know of.
they're still in
Yeah.
negotiations.
Even then, it doesn't make a difference. He's reached a quote unquote a deal, but they haven't come out and said anything. And even the Big Ten's like, well, this doesn't matter anyway. So I don't even know why we're talking about it. Harbaugh's now 1-6 in bowl games at Michigan. Hasn't won a bowl game at all since 2015 Citrus Bowl, where the MVP was Jake Rudock. I think they got deeper. I think their offensive line got a lot better, bringing in Jake Nugent, Ladarius Henderson, and Miles Hinton. They added Josiah Stewart for the edge from Coastal Carolina. Um, they lost a little bit of their offense with AJ Henning, Cade McNamara, and Eric All. I don't really think there's much to worry about in Michigan. They got deeper. They're preparing basically for the offseason, just like we've talked about. Nothing matters but the offseason. And they have gone 3-14 in their bowl games in the last 20 years. They did add Jesse Minter at DC. Huge ad. Going to be a great addition at DC for Michigan. I don't know. I don't see much different than last year. I just don't think it's. I don't think any of these teams are going to go 12-0. I think there's a slip up. I think the schedule's induced a couple of trap games, but I definitely think the talent's there for them to do what they've been doing. I think Michigan's going to have a great year.
Drew?
Yeah, I agree with everything Ethan said for Michigan. Michigan looks sweet. They return everything they need to return, all the good production. My question marks are at receiver, who's going to step up and be that big target. I think Ronnie Bell had more targets last year than like the next three receivers or something. It was
Combined.
crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. So who's going to step up and be that receiver? JJ McCarthy, obviously very good. The running back room, amazing. The offensive line, amazing. The defense looks to be just as good as last year. I think the special teams unit's going to take a step back, but I mean, you're losing Jake Moody, so
He lost the punter and the kicker.
Yeah,
Big loss.
And they both were
Brad
drafted.
Robbins, that's right.
They both were drafted.
Yeah, so obviously special teams takes a step back, but I don't think it's a huge step back. Michigan looks great. The schedule's a cupcake. I think they do slip up. For Ohio State, I also think that they slip up. I think that the quarterback position is a bit of a question mark. I know these guys are highly touted, but they haven't competed yet at the highest level. I also think that the offensive line could have some depth issues at Ohio State. Other than that,
That's
they look
true.
real good. Schedule's a little bit tougher, but I see them. I see this. I see the game as being the game again for the Big Ten. I think these two teams are on their own tier.
Core, all the viewers, we know what these teams, are really about, right? Um, Tell us as a Michigan guy, what is who is going to step up and who's going to be that guy that nobody expects, or like an unsung hero, right? Your dark horse guy.
Um, so for me, the dark horse, I have Amarian Walker. He transitioned from wide receiver to corner. He's like a super athletic, hasn't played a lot of corner, but I think the schedule being so cupcake at the beginning is going to help, and he's going to develop into that number two. I mean, you have Will Johnson, who is one of probably five of the best corners in college football, and he's a sophomore. Um, you
He's a
return
stud.
both. You return both safeties. You know, you lost R.J. Moten, who went to Florida, I think. But you returned two safeties who started last year. Rod Moore was, I think, one of the highest graded safeties in the country last year, returning. So I think Amari Walker is kind of the question mark because you need that second corner. You have Sanders still, who's came back and is going to be in the slot, who was a stud last year. So it's really, to me, that second corner. On offense, I don't think it's any surprise. I like both wide receivers, Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson. I think Roman Wilson might be the breakout of this year. His speed is just, speed kills in certain times. The other guy I think to watch, who's a really young guy who supposedly has been really good in practice, is I think it's Christian Dixon. He's a wide receiver, shown really flawless routes and such. So I think that he's someone to kind of watch out for too. Um, I think Michigan and Ohio State, I don't think either one slips up until the game. To me, the question mark is more on Ohio State. I think both quarterbacks, either one will be fine. You have so much talent around them that it's really going to be, they have to basically lose the game with their arm for the Ohio State to really lose. Your defense is always a question to me. If you got the right guy running the show, I think your secondary needs to show improvement early in the year. But I think both teams will figure out a way to be 11-0 going into the game. The only way I see Ohio State tripping up is if Ryan Day doesn't choose a quarterback and decides to play both. And if he chooses to play, if he chooses to play both in a game, kind of like what Urban Meyer did with Cardell Jones and JT Barrett and, whatever, all about, if you have to, you have to. But I mean, if you don't pick a outright starter, you're kind of floating with confidence both ways. And I think if you don't make a decision, that could hurt you in a bigger game.
Yeah.
But I think both teams are
fair.
too good. Both teams have too much talent, have more talent than anybody else in the country. And that's USC included with the best player in the country. So, I mean, I think both teams have enough talent to win it all. I'd love to see a rematch in the national title game like we should have gotten last year. And I think both teams are easily good enough and probably good enough at the beginning of the year to show that even with a loss, they probably deserve to be in the playoff.
Yeah, and I think that barring injury, I mean, Ohio State is going to be absolutely nasty. All you lost on offense that was any sort of big deal is C.J. Stroud, and
I'm gonna
I
tell you
guess it's just
something.
who steps up from there.
I'm gonna tell you something. People are gonna say this is crazy. Losing CJ wasn't as big deal as everybody's making it to be.
But then on
At
paper, it
Ohio
looks like a big
State,
deal.
at Ohio State, it's just kind of next man up
Yeah.
mentality
Yep.
now,
Now, I
just
mean,
like Georgia.
I do
It's
think
just a
their schedule's
difference.
harder. Their
It's
schedule's
just a difference.
significantly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
significantly
when it's just a
harder.
difference of not having guys who have actual game reps.
Yeah,
And you can say what you want, everything, but when CJ Stroud took over as a starter, he took it and ran with it. But there were still times where he struggled big time in big environments and couldn't get it done early in his career. So that's kind of where you'd like to see Ryan Day. Nick, you and I talk about this all the time. Run the damn ball. Help your quarterback out. Run the damn ball.
But that running back room was so beat up last year that it almost made it impossible to get a significantly consistent running back, in my opinion. And I think that
C.J. Stroud there, and he ran for 200 yards.
C.J. Stroud was not a big game quarterback at the time. His best game that he ever played was the Georgia game, and I will die on that hill. And I could be the only one on that hill.
The best game he played.
That was the best game he ever played was against Georgia because he fell apart against Michigan twice, especially in the snow, and he fell apart against Oregon. Anytime that he went up against a big team early on, he pissed down his leg. He didn't look sharp against Notre Dame, and I'll die on that hill too.
He didn't look.
I think that
you're not wrong, Ethan. The best game he ever played was against Georgia.
He checked down. He scrambled, which wasn't C.J. Stroud. You could tell that was a draft audition. And he definitely looked like he was paying more attention to what was going on than normal. So
he finally had his marbles drop in that Georgia game.
Yeah, but that shouldn't have been that game. He had so many other chances. He had all
1,000%.
Season.
It took him that long to play that great.
Well, and what do you think all of us in Columbus were like saying the entire time? Like, I'm not saying you win that game in Columbus, but let me tell you something. If C.J. Stroud plays like he did against Georgia, you sure as hell don't lose by 21 points at home.
He didn't. Yeah, I don't know.
You sure as hell don't lose by 21 points. But if he plays like he did against Georgia, that game is a little different in my opinion.
I'd like to know who that C.J. Stroud was at Georgia. I don't know.
You know what he did? He goes, well, this could be my last chance to prove scouts who are all here watching. Let me drop my balls real quick and show them what I really can do in this last game.
Speaking of dropping balls, I think if injuries get involved and I think if something hiccups, I think that Ohio State could go into Michigan with 4 losses if there's an absolutely cataclysm with injury this year. I don't think they're safe from Notre Dame. I don't think they're safe from Wisconsin. I don't think they're safe from Penn State. If that defense and Jim Knowles doesn't get their act together, they could go into that Michigan game with 4 losses. And if you find a way to pull your head out of your ass and beat Michigan with 4 losses, you're going to cause problems for the selection committee.
If Ohio State has 4 losses, Michigan will go into the Ohio State game probably starting their backup quarterback because they'll probably be already in the Big Ten championship.
That's fine, and that's fair, but what happens when they lose that game? To an Ohio State team that couldn't beat anybody they were supposed to beat all year.
That's the rivalry, though. How many times has Michigan not been – how many times has a team in the rivalry – Michigan or Ohio State not been relevant and then go in and play their ass off and should have won the game.
Agree.
I mean, that's rivalries. That's what it is. I find it very hard to believe that Ohio State won't find a way to win. I could definitely see them slipping up at like Wisconsin. I could definitely see them slipping up against Notre Dame too. I could see them slipping up. I just don't see them. They have too much. They have too much talent.
Outside of the playoff,
if you can't run the football, you can run a screen pass and the dude will take it 80 yards to the house. There's too much talent on there to not be able. And Ryan Day's too good of an offensive mind to let them not score.
Couple things here.
I agree with all that, but I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Devil's advocate, one, to answer that question, Ryan Day in his tenure in Columbus has lost 3 regular season games. 2 of them are to one team. And
they're all games that team had significant talent.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But 2 of those games were rivalry games, so anything can happen in those games.
One of them, 2 of those games were at home.
Okay, you're not wrong. But the other game was against a non-conference opponent. So
that you should have beaten.
That we definitely should have beaten. You're not. None of these things are wrong.
But weather.
But at the same time, there's been one team in the Big Ten to beat them. So if you're gonna
But it's
lose,
the only team in your mind that matters.
you're not wrong. But
It's also been the only legitimate competition that mattered in the last 10
But
years.
but to me,
right.
what are
So
those?
what are we
To
talking
me,
about 4 losses for? That's my point.
but but to
You're
me, in those
seeing.
three,
Go ahead,
he's
Corey.
just playing devil's advocate. The
Yeah.
thing is
right.
in those the 3 losses, you got smoked on the run. Those teams ran the ball right down your throat, and you
Did
couldn't stop
Oregon?
it.
I don't remember enough. Did
Yeah.
Oregon do that? Did they just
Yeah,
No,
run down the throat?
he broke
Oregon
like an
ran
80-yard touch.
counters. Oregon ran
Yeah,
counters.
when they had the running, they were doing the spread running quarterback shit. Nobody could stop that.
It was ridiculous.
But
But now,
Yeah.
okay, so let's answer some questions here. The
Drew, what were you
defense.
going to say?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, luckily for Ohio State, they aren't Texas A&M. They have a better coaching staff, so they
That's
won't go
fair.
5-7 this year.
That's true.
That's fair. That's real
Number-
fair.
I mean, talent level almost similar, but coaching staff, woo,
Ohio
different.
State's going
think-
to score 40 a game, and half the teams in college football can't score 40. So even if their defense doesn't show up, they'll win a shootout. So,
Well-
I mean, like, I just don't see,
I think here's just, and these are reports coming out of practice. Sonny Styles Jr. is getting a lot more playing time in the deep end, along with Layson Ransom and the transfer that came in. It seems like Jim Knowles now has finally realized that you can't play Tommy Eichenberg against Bowling Green when you're up by 50 in the fourth quarter. You got to get, CJ Hicks and these guys playing time. So you're going to see that. I definitely feel you're going to see a lot of these younger guys who didn't get a lot of playing time last year play their asses off the first 3 games of the season going into Notre Dame. You're going to see that. On the offensive side, nothing much is going to change. However, this is what I do think you're going to see, because from what I've heard coming out, is Ohio State's 4 deep at running back. You have Trainum, Dylan Hayden, Mayan Williams, and Travion Henderson. So I think, and by committee, I mean I think you're going to see 4 running backs, and I don't think their running attack is going to change based off of who's in the game. I think you're still going to see the same type of offense on the wide receiver position. You're going to see a rotation of Julian Fleming, Jaden Ballard, and you're also going to see Xavier Johnson and Brandon Ennis in that rotation. And from what I've heard too, is Emeka Ibuka is going to move into the JSN slot role, where he really should have been the entire time instead of playing on the outside like you had.
Nasty.
Yeah. So I think that's what you're going to see. And from the sounds of it, like Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis have been like, and this is always how it goes when you're practicing against your own team, right? I've seen a thing where Brandon Ennis cooked 2 DBs right down the middle on a deep post, and McCord or Brown hit him for like a 50-yard touchdown in practice during drills. But it's like these wide receivers are just, are essentially toying with defensive backs. Now, is that saying how bad Ohio State's defensive backs are, or how good their wide receivers are?
Well, your defensive
You're
backs were
always
not
gonna
very
have
good
that.
last year.
No. But
Well, and you also have a different kind young. The thing is like when you talk about this, Nick, you and I have talked about this before. The speed of the game changes every year. Every year, the new class of high school recruits that come into college are faster than the ones that were the year before. The equipment changes. They're able to train better. There's different things that help them get faster, stronger, things like that. So to me, you're always going to have that. You always are going to have, in the spring game, you're in early practices, you're going to have those issues. And to be honest, at Ohio State and Michigan, you can have those issues probably for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, and you'll still probably win games. But it's after those first 5 weeks when you have to make sure that you're tight in where you need to be, because these teams are too good now to where that Like what Wisconsin's going to do. Luke Fickell played at Ohio State, coached at Ohio State. He coached at UC. The offense he's going to run. What he's going to do in big situations, but it's can you stop it? And that, to me, that's the biggest question mark for Ohio State. It's never the offense, regardless of your quarterback. I think both quarterbacks could lead you to 11-0, 12-0 seasons, no doubt, because even if the ball is thrown behind Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to catch it. If it's thrown above him, he's going to catch it. Abuka's the same way. They all make spectacular plays. They're going to help out their quarterback. And I think Ryan Day is one of the best offensive minds at when you're in trouble and you need a play. That's when he throws some wrinkle dinkle to the wide receiver, fast wide receiver who runs 70 yards to the end zone. I don't have any questions about the offense. The issue is Ryan Day gave up, the defense and lets Knowles call it, and Knowles has not been what you wanted. And the Big 12, where he came from, does not play defense.
No, but he had a top 5 defense nationally every year he was at Oregon State.
And he got torched by Oklahoma, and he got torched by Texas, and he got torched because he can't. I don't want to. I mean, look, we're going through the same thing. For years, we had Don Brown. Don Brown was man coverage. If I'm blitzing everybody. Okay. And that's just the way it was. And I lived with it. And I was so ready and relieved when he left because you can't blitz. It's almost like you can't blitz anymore. The only people you can blitz who seem to get home now are your corners. And when you blitz your corners, you leave your linebacker on the tight end or the slot receiver, and they're cooked. You can't do that anymore.
I think where a lot of Ohio State's defensive troubles have came is in two positions, and these are honestly probably the two most important positions in the defense. We haven't had lockdown corners or corners that can really play press man coverage. Apparently that has been addressed in practices and camps. And then the other thing is that we had previously we haven't had it since 2019 in Columbus, is a guy or unit that with your front four you can get pressure on the quarterback. And I think that is very important. And I think that's where, if you want to look at the differences between defenses and how they performed, that's where Michigan is outperforming Ohio State's defenses are in those two positions. They have corners who can make Marvin Harrison Jr.'s day difficult, like they did. They made his day difficult, but in doing so, their front four were able to get home.
But they also played zone. They played zone. They didn't play man, because you can't play man-to-man with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. If you play man-to-man all day, they're going to burn you. You might get a good play here and there,
but what I'm saying
is play zone.
But even with zone, if you're playing a zone defense against them and they sit into the zone, your corners got to still be quick enough to break up that pass or get them down. What I'm saying though is that and in doing that, if you're playing zone, your front four has to get pressure on the quarterback because you're dropping everybody else into coverage.
So even if you add on their front four, that makes you that much better than you were last year.
That's what I'm saying. You're not letting me finish, man. I'm saying this is where we need to improve on getting pressure with our front four. And if we're going to play a zone or man-to-man, our corners have to be better at matching up in those things, closing gaps, and making it difficult for quarterbacks to find windows so our front four can get home. I mean, JTT was the only person on our team to get home to a quarterback last year, and he basically did it in one fucking game.
I mean, but I still don't think that fixes the issue, though, because you still
That's
blitz.
The difference. You could still blitz. We blitzed in 2019 when we had Jeff Hafley.
Please blitz.
We did it in 2019 with Jeff Hafley in the defense, and it was 56-28 in that November game. So we can blitz. The difference is you had 2 lockdown corners in Damon Arnett and Jeff Okuda. You had a guy on your front 4 who could get to the quarterback at any time you really fucking wanted to in Chase Young. And you had people in the back end in your safety position who could actually, if you blitzed your corner, could cover that wide receiver.
But
There's
my question
differences.
but my question is 3 of the guys that are on your secondary were the ones starting last year. So what has changed from last
I'm
year
not
to
saying
this year?
anything has changed. I'm saying those are things you have to improve going into the season on the coaching staff. I've never said those things immediately improved and they're going to be better.
I just think you need to like you said earlier, I just think you need to let the young guys. Sometimes your
You have
freshmen
to.
are better than seniors, and that's just the way it is. I mean, that's nothing against those guys. It's just
And I'm
that's
going to
what you
tell
have
you
to
right
do.
now, as an Ohio, going into the defense, I think you're going to see a lot less of Tommy Eichenberg, and you're going to see a lot more of C.J. Hicks in the linebacker room position.
Are you putting Eichenberg on the edge, or were you doing your best defensive player?
Yeah, Tommy is so slow. It is like it reminds me of watching Tough Borland. He's just so slow. He's just
no
too
coverage.
He doesn't have the ability to drop into coverage. He doesn't have the ability to drop into a coverage. And you can't.
So then you find a way to put him in certain packages where he can just blitz or he can just follow the running back to.
You're not
tackle.
wrong, but when we did that, okay, so you're not wrong, Cora. But when we did that, Donovan Edwards broke an 80-yard touchdown run because Tommy was in the wrong gap.
Well,
I watched it.
Let's give credit to the offensive line who got second depth and blocked his ass. That led the way.
But he initiated the wrong gap.
He was not in the right position, sure, but he was still there to make a tackle if the guy wasn't there to block it.
But he can't be in the position to make a tackle if he's in the wrong position.
But again, what I'm saying is all of those times that those big plays happened were because you blitzed. If you wouldn't have blitzed, your safety would have been in that hole to have a chance to make a tackle. Or on the second one, you had nobody home. He broke through the line and he went 80 yards untouched because there wasn't a single person there.
Or Tommy Eichenberg can just be in his correct gap. And if he gets blocked and stuff, whatever, you live with that, but at least he's in his correct assignment. It's not being out of position. There's differences there. There's a complete.
So if C.J. Hicks is in the same spot, you
live with
this
it.
Year,
and
he's going to live with him running 80 yards to the
but
house
if he's in the correct gap and the guy breaks the run, you live with that because the defensive player is in the correct assignment. He's doing what he's supposed to do.
You live with that, and I'll live with playing zone, not giving up a touchdown like that.
It sounds like Tommy Eichenberg doesn't know the playbook and where he's supposed to be.
No, he does.
Is Tommy Eichenberg not good?
No, he's good, but it's just that in certain positions, like in
120 tackles last year.
I was going to say he was everywhere
better,
last year.
Come on.
But what I'm saying though is but in those big plays, he was in the wrong gaps, and he floated to that gap both times,
So what about
doubled
into safety? What about your safety? Where was your safety on the Cornelius Johnson where he broke a tackle and went to the house? Oh, that's right, he blitzed.
Okay, so he blitzed and you live blitzing with that. Okay, but okay, so you get beat over the top. So Corey, like as you always said, you would rather play man, and if your guy gets beat, he gets beat for the deep ball, and you live with that because the guy made a better play.
I wouldn't do that anymore. No, I used to be like that. Don Brown was man coverage, and you live with it. Now that I've seen that we can run 3 different defenses on 3 different plays, I would much rather do that than run. Why would you leave your corners on? First of all, any defensive coordinator this year who leaves their corners on an island on Marvin Harrison Jr. is an idiot. An absolute
well, you're not
idiot.
Wrong.
Does everybody agree with that? Okay.
Yeah.
So the only way to, first of all, there's only one way to stop Ohio State's offense. You have to play zone and you tackle when they're in front of you. If you don't tackle, they're gone. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's always been. That's the way Ryan Day's offense is. So the thing is my thing is if it works, if it's worked once, it's going to work again, right? So why would you change that? My thing is the players that Knowles has are capable of doing everything, right? They're capable of being great on defensive positions. But sometimes it's not just about the line getting home. It's also about the play call for what it is. You also have to know your tendencies. To me, I don't understand. Ohio State for a quarter and a half of, you could even say the first half of the Michigan game, were literally perfect every single time they were in the right spot. They wouldn't allow anything running the football, right? So how come because of one play he broke a touchdown run? It was tendencies that Ohio State had all year. Ohio State struggled all year on the back end last year. All year. They had good games, sure, but they struggled. Your corners got roasted last year. So my thing is if you're having the same guys play, they got more repetition. But why are they going to be, you got to put them in a position to be successful. You can't just put them in the same position. Oh, you got roasted last year, so you have no choice but to get better. You can't, to me, your defense is not going to be good if you play man coverage. Because the way his defense works is he blitzes. And that's just the way it is. And that's the way he is. And that's the way he does it. And against mid-level teams who 9 of your 11 games are against Ohio State, probably against Ohio State outside of maybe Notre Dame, those games, you're going to win because your offense will score. You'll score, you'll get a stop, you'll score, you'll get a stop, you'll score, and you're up 3 touchdowns and the game's over. That's how Ohio State football basically has been the last 3 years, right? 4 years. You score 3 touchdowns probably in the first quarter and the game's over. Your defense doesn't have to be great. But in those big games is where you have an issue. And if you don't address those issues, you're just going to get roasted. I'm telling you right now, if you don't block or if you're in the right gap and you allow Michigan's offensive line to get to the second level, you're going to have a lot more 80-yard touchdown runs through the middle of your defense. Michigan's offensive line is too good. I first of all, I never even thought I could even say those words out of my mouth, that Michigan's offensive line is too good, but they're good. They have the best offensive line coach in the country. For once, they're starting to not necessarily go after the 5-star guys. They're going after those 4-star guys who are 6'8", 300 pounds that they can mold, that by his junior year when he's ready to go, he can mold. Michigan has 2 guys on every position on the offensive line that would start on any other team in the Big Ten.
Agreed.
Yep.
So it's your defense has to make a change on the back end. I don't think it's your linebackers. I don't think you fault a guy because he was in the wrong spot. He made 120 tackles. Okay, that doesn't happen in the NFL very often. Outside of 4 or 5 guys a year that have 130 tackles. I mean, there's a reason why he was always near the ball. I don't think he's the problem. I think the problem is the scheme that your defense is running. To me. Now, I could be wrong, and this year could be completely different, and they could be the number 1 defense in the country and be unbelievable. And they could be. They have all the talent to be. But if I watch Ohio State football and I watch, let's say, in the Notre Dame game, and I see Notre Dame run for 15 yards right through the middle of the defense, that's because it's the same defense. The play calling was awful, horrendous. You had a good quarter of good play calling defensively against us last year. 1 quarter.
You just
Then
said a half
time,
4 minutes ago.
No. I'm saying a half because we didn't produce on offense the way we should have. There were certain plays. We had holding penalty that put us 3rd and 15. You're not going to get 15 yards in a big game like that unless it's a fucking miracle. Like, we didn't produce the way we should have, and that's on us for that quarter too. You played a really good half defensively, but your play calling defensively for the first quarter was good. Then once you started to blitz, what happened? You started to give up chunk plays. There's no reason why our tight end should be running wide open 50 yards down the field. Because you blitz. All because you blitz. Because when you blitz, you put pressure on your defense. So if you know Eichenberg is not very fast and tends to not be in the right gap, you know what you do? You don't drop him back in coverage, but you put someone behind him so there's someone there instead of blitzing that guy and putting him on an island by himself. That's all. I mean, to me, defense is very simple. You can probably pick and choose probably to start the game. You know the exact probably ways it's going to go out. You know, sometimes the team is just better, you know, and that happens too. You know, Rutgers, half the time they're in the right position, but they can't help it that their 6'2", 230 linebacker is getting run over by 6'8", 325 left tackle. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. But to me, I think Ohio State needs to make a change. I don't like their defensive coordinator. Didn't like the hire. Nick, you could be the first one to tell everyone that I told you I didn't like the hire for him. To me, it's not the move. And I think Ohio State is too good on offense to be not good on defense.
Yeah, I don't overly love Jim Knowles. He had 2 good years at Oklahoma State. One of them was the COVID season, which I don't count. But like the talent level here is so good that even allowing 21 points a game last year, like it seems like it was a bad year for Ohio State's defense. That's still one of the best defenses in the country. So
they were top 25 across the board in all their stats.
Yeah. It's a weird situation. I think it's a big year for Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
And well, it's a big year, obviously.
And that, to me, that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Mm-hmm. Okay. For him to even be mentioned on the hot seat is ridiculous. Is the most ridiculous thing. And if I were Ryan Day, I'd be pissed.
Mm-hmm.
All because I can't beat one team. To me, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
They had Harbaugh on the hot seat for 4 years because he couldn't beat one team.
Right. That's what. Right. Why do you think? Why do you think that's ridiculous? Your entire coaching staff for 7 years was on the hot seat because they couldn't beat one team. Sorry, 9 years in a row. They were in.
The last 4 were the big ones.
The big ones, but they were so. Even Harbaugh came in, got blown out against his first game against Urban.
But
hold on, stop.
Only loss.
You're not wrong.
Ryan Day's only conference loss is to Michigan. He's lost twice in 5 years?
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Your fan base is running him out of Columbus because he can't beat Michigan. That's one thing. I understand that. But that's ridiculous. There's no way. We wanted him fired because he couldn't beat Ohio State, but he was also losing to Penn State. He also lost to Iowa. He also lost to Minnesota. He also lost to teams, Wisconsin. He shouldn't have lost to those teams. Ryan Day is not losing to those teams. He's literally only losing to one team. Yes, it happens to be Michigan. And yes, it happens to be that somehow, some way, Jim Harbaugh outcoached him in 2 games.
And
but that's
the
and let me add one more thing to it. And Ryan Day has played for a national title, should have won a national title and got robbed. And should have been playing for another national title this past year. That he got robbed of. That you could potentially make that argument too. That he got robbed of too because of an unnecessary hit.
I mean, I think this is the only one he got a national championship really robbed of him, because 2019 you're going up against LSU and Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and all them. so that's a coin flip. But when you're talking about last year, yeah, if that penalty gets called against Marv for
But
that
that's what I'm
targeting,
saying. That's why I think
you're
it's
not.
crazy. I don't think it's crazy that they want him gone because he can't beat Michigan. I think it's crazy because they want him gone because those are his only 2 losses. You've lost, was he lost 7 games total in 5 years?
He's lost 3 games in the regular season. He lost against
He's like 46-5.
Clemson.
46-5. Any
against
college in the
Alabama
country,
and Georgia.
would want their head coach to go 46-5 in 5
Sorry,
years.
45-6
6,
losses.
yeah.
Sorry. Okay, still, sorry, 45-6. Any coach in the country going into a job would say, if my first 5 years are 45-6, regardless of who the 6 losses are to, are they getting fired? No chance.
Right, but
45-6.
but that's
You
just
lost in a national title, and you've lost to your rival twice.
right. But that's just the standard that was brought to us by the previous head coach.
So my question to you then would be, who do you get that's better?
I don't know. I think there's a couple people who, I don't think anybody offensively is going to be better than Ryan Day, obviously, because his offense has been like, what, number 1 or 2 in the country every year he's been a head coach so far. Yeah, he's had the top offense in the country for a very long time.
They were the number 2 scoring offense last year.
I said top 2. They were in the top 2 probably every year he's been at Ohio State. I guarantee you. They've been in the top 2. So you're not going to do better, but I think, and Corey, you know this just as well as I know this. When you're in Michigan, and you saw this with Rich Rodriguez. Now, that's a different style because he wasn't, I don't think he was a good coach to begin with. But Rich Rod, he wasn't a Michigan guy. He didn't know Michigan, right? And you saw what happened. Things started going south. And then what happened? Just hold on. Then you brought in a Michigan guy in Brady Hoke, and what happened? You started getting out of that spiral downfall, and you started coming back up. And then you got a real Michigan guy in Jim Harbaugh, who then elevated the program back up to where it was supposed to be.
Yeah, he had to rebuild it.
But he built it back up to where it was supposed to be. Okay? Now, you go from Jim Tressel, born and raised Ohio guy, didn't lose to Michigan. He lost to him twice, but rarely lost to Michigan. Then you go to Urban Meyer, a born and raised Ohio guy, didn't lose to him at all. And then you go to Ryan Day, who's not from Ohio. He's not an Ohio guy. And what is that? But what that happens
by your Ohio
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Take over.
Same thing John Cooper was. John Cooper was handpicked to take it over. Or whoever it was, he wasn't an Ohio guy. But the point is when at Ohio State, we have one thing and one thing only that is our objective. Our goals, and it was posted by Urban Meyer, you beat the team up north and you win every other fucking game. But if you don't do that, then it doesn't matter. And here's the thing, and there was a poll done where they asked Ohio State fans, if you went 1-11 and your one loss was against Michigan, would you consider that a successful season? And everybody said yes. Because your one win is against them. Nothing else would matter if your one win was against them. But nothing. That's the difference in our culture.
We can all agree that they're the most jaded fan base in all of college sports.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
100%.
But since 2000, since 2000, that jadedness has came from somewhere, and that jadedness has came from the mindset that we don't lose to Michigan.
Because Michigan was so bad from 2000 to when Jim Harbaugh got there.
Bad?
They were not. No. They were. Listen to me. They were not where they should have been. Am I right? You could say outside of maybe a few years where they had a lot of talent.
So bad.
They had a lot of talent.
They were not the blue blood that they should be.
They
were
went
not in
2 and
national
4 in the
championship
COVID
games.
year. They were not a national championship contender. So Ohio
COVID
State
doesn't
fans
count.
just got used to it. Oh, we're going to go kick the shit out of them. Oh, we're going to go kick
You're
the shit
talking
out of
about
them.
since 2000 you guys have been bad? You guys were in BCS bowl games from like 2000 to 2010 and when you guys or 2009 when
And how
Rich
many
Rod.
and how many times did we win the Big Ten?
None.
They were not in
because
contention
because
for
Jim
years.
Tressel because the years you guys would have won the Big Ten, Jim Tressel beat Michigan. That's the difference.
Your fan base got so used to you just beating the shit out of us that you can't
because it
handle
became
it.
because
The-
it
no, no, no,
became
but
a
here's the thing.
standard.
It wasn't. It's not even that you lost to Michigan at Michigan. The reason your fan base is going crazy is because you got demolished at home by 22 points, and you were winning at halftime.
And that's the standard
Michigan-
that it's held to in Columbus.
Michigan only has 9-10 win seasons since the year 2000.
That's what I'm saying.
They
That's
were
what I'm
never
saying.
in contention for anything.
They were never. I'm telling you, I've been a fan for so long. I understand. Okay, I know the first thing that Ohio State has to do better than Michigan is they have to recruit Ohio. They have to recruit Ohio better. That's the first thing. Which they've done this cycle 24. They've done a really good job of keeping Ohio kids in Ohio. Also, shout out to Chris Henry Jr. Hope he becomes a stud.
It'd be dope.
Yeah, that would be sweet. Okay. Even though he's at Ohio State, I still want the kid to do well. After his dad passed away and got adopted by Pac-Man Jones, to then be getting a college scholarship offer as a sophomore, right? He's a sophomore?
Yeah.
Or he's going to be
Yeah.
going into his junior year. That's
So-
insane.
Junior.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So are we all 11-1 across the board for both of these teams? Or Corey, you going?
I'm going Michigan. I'm going Michigan 12-0, Ohio State 11-1, and both make the playoff again.
I have Michigan 11-1.
I'll see you in the net.
and I've got Ohio State 10-2 actually.
Well, it'll be an absolute.
What do you have
It-
Michigan, Ethan? Sorry.
11-1.
Okay. Drew.
Michigan cupcake schedule. They don't play a game until November, but I think they lose to Penn State. I have Michigan at 11-1. I think Ohio State also loses to either Michigan or Wisconsin or Penn. I also have them at 11-1. I say don't sleep on Western Kentucky. The first quarter of that game is going to be fun. Just the first quarter, though.
Okay.
A little bit of shell shock for everybody.
That'll be a good test for your secondary.
Okay. Western Kentucky.
Yeah, their offense is awesome, but their defense is dog shit. So
So what I'm hearing is you'll win 63-21.
yeah, but the first quarter will be like
It'll be like
14-10
14-7
or something.
or 4. Yeah, I got you.
I'm telling you
Yes.
right now,
14-10.
there's a game that I would mark. If the 4-game suspension holds true, there's a game that I would mark on Michigan's calendar.
Marking Rutgers on the calendar.
Nope. Saturday, September 30th in Lincoln. Mark that. I would mark that down because that could be a slip-up game. With Harbaugh,
He's back there.
you're not wrong, but what a statement Matt Rule can make in that game for his program. That's all I'm saying.
True.
That's all I'm saying. It's just one of those games where he could say, "Oh, hey, they're at full strength, guys. We don't have an excuse. Let's go. They don't have an excuse. Let's go out there and beat them."
Yeah, but you can say that for any
You can
Nebraska, Penn State, Wisconsin
you're not-
game this year.
You're not wrong,
I
but
think-
I'm just saying that game, especially being in Lincoln, is going to be a tough one because it's Michigan's first road game of the year. Harbaugh's back. You got a lot of excitement. Emotions are running a little high and stuff. I'm just saying that'd be a game I'd mark.
Every game is a trap game.
Right. And
Every game is a
Yeah.
trap game.
and the game I'm marking for Ohio State is October 22nd, 21st when Penn State comes. I think
I'm marking that whole month of October if I'm Ohio State.
Yeah, dude, October's big for Ohio State.
Maryland is nasty, and I think that also starts off as a scare game. I think Maryland could be leading at the half if not everybody's awake.
could
And
possibly.
Ohio State has troubles in West Loth.
True.
And
Well,
that could be a trap going into Penn State and Wisconsin.
truth.
Mm-hmm. That's
But
a split.
I just
that's
when I just view that, that's just what I see. That's just what I'm seeing.
I think Michigan has 2 trap games. I think it's more the Minnesota game as opposed to the Nebraska game. And then I think the at Maryland the week before.
The week
Sandwich
after.
in between Penn State and Ohio State.
That's the
Yeah.
worst
That's
game.
going to be tough, man.
The other game I hate to say about Michigan is I think Michigan State. It just nothing matters. Nothing matters. They always play their best game against us, regardless of how good they are.
If I find
Now,
an
it would give-
offense, I think I
It
could
would give
agree
me
with
no bigger joy than to just blow them out of the water and start Mel Tucker's train out of Michigan State now. But I mean, when you're this good and projected to be this good, it's every game is a trap.
I'm just gonna
The
say
first game of
this.
the year, if you don't come out and score a touchdown on the first drive, you could be in trouble.
Well, and I'm gonna say
that's just the way.
I'm gonna say this too. The last time Michigan was projected to be in the national championship game, correct me if I'm wrong,
not.
Court.
But they're
Well,
not
but they're
projected to be
not.
there.
But they're projected to be in the playoff.
No, they're
Even though.
not.
Oh
They're
no, that's
not.
right. They have like the 5th best odds or like 6th
Ohio
best.
State has 88% chance to be in the playoff, and you want to know why that is? Because they can lose to Michigan and still make it. But Michigan only has a 25% chance. So if they lose a game, they won't make it because they don't like it's the schedule argument.
But I'm saying the last time.
Like
okay,
Harbaugh,
sorry.
They don't. It's a whole bunch of things.
Let me rephrase. The last time Michigan had this much hype around a team going into a season was 2007 with Henny, Hart, and all them, right?
05.
No.
05 is when they lost to Appalachian State.
No, that was 07.
That was 07 or 08.
Yeah, that was 07. That's what that team. Because it was because Michigan lost the 1-2 game and then next year returned everybody and was like favorite to win the national title.
Yeah, it was 07.
07. So if I was a Michigan fan, that's something I would just be a little in the back of my mind is making sure that does not happen again this year.
Well, to be fair,
and it probably won't.
Give Appalachian State their credit. They had won 2 straight national titles.
I think they won like 3.
Their team returned a whole bunch of starters. That team was really good.
No, so you're not wrong.
Now there's no excuse, absolutely. But
I'm just saying if just to have that in the back of your mind and say that can't happen this year.
Well, here's the one thing I will say. The one thing
Am I right? Am I right, Ethan?
Yeah, I mean,
can't let that happen.
Eastern Carolina and UNLV are the same level as Appalachian State and Toledo that year.
No.
The thing is, Michigan is just going to run the ball, and 9 out of 10 drives, Michigan's going to be able to push them around and get first downs and score a touchdown. That's just the way they play. They will air it out if they have to. There's a lot of rumors that supposedly we're going to be like 60-40 pass this year. Don't buy it. Don't buy it.
Sounds terrible.
Well, supposedly the passing portion is like screen passes. And they're using like Donovan Edwards behind the line of scrimmage.
He was basically Harbaugh wants to show that they can throw the ball as well as run and have a semi-balanced attack.
And we all know that it's going to be 80% run, 20% pass.
And unfortunately, with that formula, I don't think you can win a national title.
I think that you don't show your hand until it matters. I think that you play your game.
I don't even think that. No, don't get me wrong, Corey. Don't get me wrong. You have to have a solid run game. You have to be able to run the football to win a national title, but you also have to be able to. You also can't be one-dimensional, and you have to show teams early on that you can throw the football effectively. And that's just my opinion, because I mean you have to. Because if you're one dimensional, then you're just going to allow a team to stack the box against you and say, "Oh, you want to use the run to open up everything. Well, I'm going to take that away from you immediately, and then force you to do something you have never done all season."
This just brings us back to the conversation we had a half hour ago
Yeah,
about Donovan Edwards gutting the defense.
no, but that's just the thing is like, but that's but when you face, I think when you get into like the national championship, when you're going to face a Georgia or Alabama, you can't be one dimensional against them. You've had to prove throughout the season you can throw the football effectively.
Pretty sure LSU was one dimensional that year in
LSU,
19.
they ran the football.
Not really.
Not like you want to see. But
Burrow threw 60 touchdowns. Something ridiculous like that. I mean, no, they were able to run the football. Absolutely. You have to be able to run the football effectively and use the pass when you have to. However, when you have an offensive line as talented as Michigan does and the depth they have, running the football just wears you down.
So
wears you down. And then when you think it's going to happen again, they run it one more time and it busts loose.
Right. But I'm just going to say this, Ethan. Clyde's Edwards-Helaire in 2019 had 1,400 rushing yards with 16 touchdowns.
On a 6.6 average.
Yeah, on a 6.6 average. So they ran the football. It was
How many times did he run the ball?
He ran the ball attempts 215.
And how many times did they pass the ball?
527.
So that's like 70-30. That's like
you're not wrong, but you still ran the ball for 1,500 yards.
There's a reason that the academy schools aren't contenders for national titles or even conference titles.
Because they're
one dimensional. Yards? Yeah, Air Force is legit, but you know what the fuck they're gonna do. Like, if you're a good team, you're going to beat those schools because it's the easiest game plan you can have.
That's all I'm saying is you can't be one.
You got to balance the offense.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got to be truly balanced. And if I'm being honest, I don't think Ohio State's been a good balanced offense in the past few years. I don't think Michigan's been a good, true balanced offense. When you look at the best balanced offense, I look at Georgia. They have a nice, good split of running and passing. The past couple of years, that's been your balanced offense. Because, and I'll say this, Ryan Day, when he can't run the ball, when those running gaps aren't open, he drops back and he just goes, all right, well then I'm gonna pass and open this up. And you can't do that. You gotta stick with a formula. But all right, guys, that's it. Good show. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for stopping out this Sunday. Take it easy, fellas. We'll see you later.